EU Green Deal from Vision to Actions, which is organized with the cooperation of SGI Europe and the Employers Group. So the linguistic regime is the following. You can speak in French, German, English, Italian, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, Romanian, Bulgarian, Hungarian, Latvian, and Lithuanian. You can listen to in French, German, English, Italian, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, Romanian, and Bulgarian. Some quick instructions regarding the system Interactio, which we are using for this meeting. So if you want to take the floor, please click the raised hand button. After you are giving the floor, you can click speak and will be heard by the other participants. So in 1-2 minutes, I will give the floor to the president of the Employers Group, Mr. Mallia, but we are still waiting for one participant. So I just ask you the patience of a few minutes, and then we will start this meeting. Thank you. So once again, we just been informed that all speakers are now connected. So I'll give the floor to the president of the Employers Group, Mr. Stefano Mallia. Stefano, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everyone, to my colleagues and to our guests. Indeed, I am looking forward to this event of today. Let me formally welcome you on behalf of the Employers Group and of SGI Europe for this webinar, which I think has a very relevant and very timely title of the EU Green Deal from Vision to Actions. And we are keen on really moving from vision to actions because I believe that our mind frame collectively is one of concrete action. Today's webinar is organized with our partner, SGI Europe, who throughout my 10 years as a member of the EESC, I have seen that together with them and our other European partners, we have been able to create a number of events, and it is only by working together that we are able to have the biggest impact and benefits for all sides. And my intention is that building on the previous year's good work, my intention is to continue to consolidate our relationship together, the Employers Group and SGI. The Employers Group has, over the past months, already had the chance to meet all of our partner organizations to discuss our business priorities for this year, for 2021. And indeed, just over a week ago, we had a successful event with Euro Chambers concerning the single market as well moving forward. It is positive to see that these initiatives take place as we consider them to be important for creating a European business ecosystem that provides opportunities for companies to grow, boost jobs, and create prosperity for all. Invariably, it is also a good opportunity for us to debate different ideas, to put forward different points of view, and I also like to say to fertilize the brain with different points of view and ideas. I am very happy that we have the Secretary General with us, Valeria Ronzetti, who I salute and say hello to, and several members of SGI Europe, including Vice President Brandolini. In this regard, I would also wish to thank very much Milena Angelova, who is a member of our group, of the Employers Group, but also Vice President of SGI Europe, who was crucial in helping us put together this event of today. One of the key priorities of the Employers Group is to bridge the gap between the world of actual business and the European stroke business Brussels level. We have, I believe, the important duty of providing the link between the entrepreneurs we represent and the political level in Brussels. In our events, we seek to connect the business reality and the European reality. And in our list of speakers today, we have people from both spheres, from the political sphere, as well as people directly coming from the business sphere. It is only through the thorough understanding of these two spheres that we can be effective in designing appropriate and effective policy, whilst ensuring that we create a flexible business ecosystem. The lineup of speakers we have today will enable us to bring the two realities together and provide a unique added value to this event. Saying a few words about climate change, there is certainly no need for me to say that climate change is a challenge that can only be tackled if we are all working together on solutions that allow us to create prosperity and well-being for people while respecting the planetary boundaries. Although greenhouse emissions in the EU 27 have been on a downward trend over the past year, the EU's goal of climate neutrality by 2050 is still, at least by my reckoning, something of a far stretch. Proactive climate action is an obvious part of today's business. However, effective climate policy cannot be brought about by business or indeed the market alone, but neither can it be brought about without enterprises and without entrepreneurs. Achieving the green and digital transitions will require enormous investment and breakthrough technologies in a rapidly changing and uncertain global environment, with an uneven level playing field for our businesses. For the Green Deal to succeed, and this is important, for the Green Deal to succeed, it needs to enhance competitiveness. Also, for small companies and all the sectors. Therefore, much more thinking needs to be brought for the implementation. For example, its intrinsic link with taxonomy. This morning, whilst I was engaging in some social media vis-a-vis this event, I tweeted that the momentum of the green agenda is now unstoppable, but that this must be based on a strong economy. To me, the link is there and it is obvious and it is intrinsic. When I say unstoppable, I don't only refer to Europe, but to all the key continents, where, let us not make any mistakes, we should make no mistake, the race is already on as to who will develop the most green and economically sound model. Who wins this race will take leadership of the global economy. So it is really up to us to ensure that we are at the forefront of this effort. The EU must focus on the most effective way of decarbonizing the economy and society in a sustainable manner. Electrification and digitalization help improve energy efficiency and achieve considerable reductions in emissions. Measures that promote the circular and bio-based economy also provide manifold opportunities for combating climate change and enhancing the sustainable use of natural resources in a way that creates new jobs, new businesses, and new jobs simultaneously. Services of general interest will certainly play a big role in this regard. While the challenges are unprecedented, it is exactly now the time for the business community to demonstrate and deliver on the digital and green transition with the aim of helping the EU to adapt, survive, and foster the next EU generation. Climate neutrality will not be an easy task for Europe or indeed for anyone, but I am convinced that more and more European companies are ready and are indeed already taking on the challenge. I very much look forward to listening to our speakers of today on how EU companies and especially services of general interest can address the biggest challenge of our generation. Services of general interest have been an indispensable support for all Europeans during the crisis, and I am certain that they will have the same vital role in the fight against climate change. I will now hand over to you, Valeria, to give your opening remarks, and once again, I thank you for your availability and for your enthusiasm for co-organizing this webinar together with us today. So Valeria, I pass on to you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ronzetti, your microphone is open. You can press speak.
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello? Okay, so I start again. I started saying thank you, dear Mr. Malia, dear Stefano, for giving us the opportunity to organize this joint event. Is the first webinar we organize since we changed our name from CEP to SGI Europe. So the first with this new name in the Economic and Social Committee. So I'm really honored to open it with you, and I hope this is the first of a series of joint event. I wanted to start with our name and the change of name, just to recall to many, the few that do not know us yet under this new name, that we were formerly CEP. And this change of name has a specific significance for the webinar of today. As several of you might know, CEP was standing for the acronym of Centre Européen des Entreprises Publiques. When in 1961 we were founded, we were representing big network industries, mainly from the south of Europe. And then we evolved in the 90s until today in the most diversified representation of providers of services of general interest, going from big to small and medium-sized providers from all over Europe, both at the national and the local level. Today, SGI Europe represents more than 500,000 enterprises providing SGI all over Europe, contributing to 26% of the EU GDP and employing 30% of the EU workforce. 60,000 out of these 500,000 are small and medium, so are local providers that employ less than 500 employees. I say all this to give you an idea on how we do live the challenges and opportunities represented by the Green Deal on a daily basis at the very ground level. And this is indeed the perspective that we wanted to bring today into this webinar, from vision to action, having speakers on our side that do not only represent the policy making of this initiative, but also those who have to implement it at the very ground level. It's true, as Stefano said, that this is an unprecedented time. This is the momentum, is an opportunity not to miss. But indeed, we have to play it well. We have to make it in a way that is going to facilitate providers and employers of services of general interest to be sustainable and green. In a way, I would say that our members are not sustainable entrepreneurs. They are the entrepreneurs of sustainability. They are those who are entrusted to provide Europe with sustainable growth. And this is for me a very important point, because this is what differentiates us from other business. We are entrusted, we have this mission. This means very concretely that we don't have a choice whether to like or not the Green Deal, whether to like or not taxonomy. We will have to implement it. We will have to find the business case to all those measures. And that is why we have a specific interest to make it work in a way that is sustainable and possible for the providers of service of general interest, which serve the citizens on a daily basis, and that, as Stefano already said, have been crucial and instrumental, especially in the period of the COVID pandemic that we are still living, and the crisis, social and economic, that we are going to face in the next years. That is why our approach to the climate change, Green Deal and taxonomy scenario calls for a 360-degree solution. We can't only speak about green tackling the environmental aspect. You have to combine environmental with the social aspect. You can't only speak about the Green Deal as a new growth strategy if you don't also review the economic governance infrastructure at European level that will need to be modernized if we really want to achieve sustainable growth. This is the big picture that we wanted to put on the table today. And the speaker that I have the honor to introduce now from our side represent for me the quintessence of all these different aspects. Jeanette Boncombe is indeed not only the chair of our sustainability board, but also, and mainly I would say, someone that for years has dedicated his daily life to a big enterprise that can be a symbol of how sustainable growth can become a reality. Is indeed right now the head of mission, corporate division, innovation, corporate responsibility and strategy at EDF. But it's also, and this brings to us also the global perspective, the Secretary General of the French Council of Energy, where he has to deal with energy providers all over the world, because this is the final important ingredient we need to succeed. Europe needs to become really a global player in this story if we want to have a competitive advantage within the Green Deal. Finally, I would like to have a special thank you to Nathan Fabian, who made us the honor to participate today. Nathan is the chair of the European Commission Platform on Sustainable Finance. And I would like all of us to really take the opportunity of his presence to ask all what you didn't have to ask until now about taxonomy, because taxonomy is going to be a game changer in this story. And we are there to make it succeed, to have it right, but we are those who can bring the solution to make it work. So thank you to all, and I will now give the floor to Jeanette for setting the scene on our side.
Monsieur Boncombe, vous pouvez appuyer Speak.
Merci.
Oui, on vous entend, mais on ne vous voit pas. Oui, oui, c'est mieux.
Désolé pour ce petit...
Oh, I apologize for that, the speaker says. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the 11th of December 2019, the European Commission presented its green package, as we say in French, the Green Deal. It's a roadmap which is very ambitious to establish that carbon neutrality which we need by 2050, but also in a bid to spur the use of certain resources, reduce pollution, amongst other things. We want a more sustainable Europe. We want to see the environmental challenges we have as opportunities while making investments thanks to innovative financial tools which are inclusive for all. At the beginning of 2020, however, the COVID pandemic struck the world. An unedited shock reverberated across the world. It was of a huge scale and duration which has had enormous repercussions. We haven't yet fully come out of that health crisis. 3 million people lost their lives to it, 700,000 of which were within the EU. And we are now at the beginning of one of the worst economic crises for the EU. Having been struck by the pandemic, the EU area has seen its growth down by 6.8%, and I believe that those devastating effects are being felt by homes, local authorities, companies, employment, and we will see that inequality and poverty increase as a result of that. There is a destruction of human wealth, if you will, which we are witnessing at present. We don't want to question the relevance of the Green Deal. Quite the opposite. I think it is more relevant than ever. Nonetheless, that said, I think it is impossible to carry on as if nothing had happened and to continue with its implementation without questioning it. I think the situation is as urgent as ever, as with other environmental issues. But there are certain risks we need to take into account. European citizens were amazed to see how weak their health systems were in the light of their health systems and how they were able to evaluate situations. These now have to adapt to new risks, and that is a key objective. Of course, there are other health risks, perhaps the emergence of new viruses, maybe even more dangerous, or cyber attacks, which of course our digital economy are increasingly vulnerable to. We need services of general interest to be involved here. And of course, that will have to be done within tight budgetary constraints. We need to ensure that operational material is used here and in a significant fashion. And we are in a position to manage both the risks and the costs. We don't want to give up on research and innovation or development because they will provide us with the solutions for the future. But it is no longer possible for us to wait to roll out effective solutions, even if at present they are not totally perfect. The Green Deal has accorded its just place to investment and financing. Everybody acknowledged that the sum was colossal. The investments envisaged at the end of 2019 were largely towards moving towards carbon neutrality. But now we have, on the one hand, re-establish the economic balance, finding the crisis, and also re-industrialization and relocalization. We need key strategies within the EU which give greater importance to European sovereignty, whether that be commercial, industrial, or in healthcare terms. And what about the world after? We're not going to be able to build the future's industry without availing of Europe's old industries, because I think they can re-establish the health of the European economy. They can create jobs and re-establish citizens' well-being. I think thinking about how we approach things, that has to change. Industrial practices will have to have a greater place so that we don't repeat errors of the past. I believe it is indispensable, given the need that we have to act swiftly. We must perhaps see that realism takes the place of ideology. We have climate change battle at place, and sadly, as we tackle it, we cannot base it all on dreams. We have to have net zero energy by 2050. And I think we've got 3 possible courses of action here. But what we can also see, we can't trip up along any of those stages. We have to have companies that are able to prove the health of their finances, because without that, the situation will deteriorate for economic actors who, of course, are in a far weaker financial situation than previously, and we need to re-establish that financial health, if you will. As Christine Lagarde herself has said, President of the European Central Bank, and here I quote, "Exceptional periods mean that we need exceptional measures." Different solutions have to be increased in the face of financing and, of course, breaching that wall of debt. It is indispensable in the current situation to think outside the box and to implement decisions of an extraordinary nature while trying to stick to the monetary situation and financial demands. We swiftly need to work towards a calmer building and re-establishment of Europe, and we need to be key stakeholders here. Now, the social dimension when it comes to health and the economy is one of the key challenges facing Europe in its crisis. Thinking about there is a very alarming situation vis-à-vis inequalities and poverty. And we need to ensure that that balance is re-established here, because the crisis is going to increase the number of companies that cease and see an increase in unemployment, therefore. The social divide has never been quite as visible as it is now. You have to think about schools, companies, and they have to adapt to new ways of life in various ways. Europe cannot have a Green Deal that leaves European citizens to one side. The idea of inclusion has a clear link with the renewal of industry in Europe. Europe's industry of the future means we have to have new competence, and we need to have training of a significant number of qualified people in priority jobs. That has to come first. These competence will be used within a new economic, more traditional sector, if you will, and these will form the basis of what we're going to do. Involving European citizens and their links with local authorities, members of SGI Europe will be able to commit towards a more balanced society. The Green Deal is a key thrust as we work towards developing Europe, and we need to see its implementation move forward, but we can't do so without understanding the current situation. We need to establish priorities, of course, and to tidy up the timetable. We can't do more and better until we come out of this crisis, which has weakened us so much and left us with fewer resources. Coming up with which the priorities are is a political choice. Certainly we want a more sustainable Europe, more committed to acting against climate change, but also more inclusive and more resilient. Our effort here during COVID-19 and as a result of climate change will be insufficient unless they are viewed within a greater context of more international solidarity and cooperation, because this needs to be something carried out on a world stage. Let's say it clearly. We won't win this fight against climate change unless we don't all help transfer technology, financing, developing countries. 3 points here. We need to look at the what is at stake here in environmental terms. We need to take into account the need to be resilient to other risks and also to work on social inclusion, which sadly this health crisis has highlighted even more. The future annual report on 2021 will be presented during the course of the summer, and this will look at some of these emerging risks together with the potential repercussions they will have on the economy and citizens. This work is fundamental insofar as if we need to act now, it is by looking closely towards the future. The implementation of the Green Deal also involves developing investment and therefore to ensure that economic actors are able to get fully back on their feet and develop their competences. These investments, without any ambiguity, need to be based on clear criteria. They need to focus on combating climate change. Services of general interest, which I think are in the forefront here at this crisis, they are undergoing transformation insofar as they are close to the European citizens. And if we're going to rethink the Green Deal, we have to have a new one that looks at the demands in place resulting from the health crisis. Let's hope it all goes well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Jeanette, for kicking off the actual debate with this presentation. And I would first of all like to present myself as the president of Group 1 appointed. My name is Milena Angelova, and I'm both a member of Group 1 and vice president of SGI Europe, and I have the honor to moderate the debate today. And after the president of Group 1 said so well the link and the importance of the competitiveness to highlight the Green Deal and to implement the Green Deal. And after the Secretary General of SGI Europe, Valeria Ronziti, highlighted the importance of service of general interest, now I think we are ready to move to our panel today, which should shed light on the fact how we are going to mobilize the private investments in order to help financing this so ambitious transition to the Green Deal. And the language of programming this endeavor is the European taxonomy. So we are going to speak about the criteria and about programming the investments and shifting them toward Green Deal achievement and toward winning the war against climate changes. Amongst our distinguished panelists, we have today with us Madame Maria Espírito Santo, who is the Deputy Director General for Energy at the Portuguese Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and one of the leading figures during the Portuguese presidency on combating the climate change. As Valeria already pointed, we have the great honor to have with us today Nathan Fabian, who is the chair of European Commission Platform on Sustainable Finance. And this is the permanent group who is helping to implement the European taxonomy and to support the Commission in the technical preparation of delegated acts. Nathan is also the Chief Responsible Investment Officer at the Principle for Responsible Investment, initiative launched together with the United Nations and UN Global Compact. We have with us Filippo Brandolini, who is Vice President of SGI Europe and member on behalf of SGI Europe of the Platform on Sustainable Finance. Also, Filippo is President of Hera Ambiente, the largest Italian waste company, and he's also Vice President of Utilitalia, the Federation of Italian Utilities, providing public services in sectors such as environment, water, and energy. We have our esteemed colleague, Stefan Bach, who is Group 1 member since 2010, and he's currently the Rapporteur on Sustainable Finance Taxonomy and Climate Change. Stefan Bach is Director for European and Sustainable Logistics in the Swedish Confederation of Transport Enterprises, and he has been part of the European Economic and Social Committee delegation on 5 UN COP events so far. Now I would like to move to the panel discussion. First round, we will give the speakers time for opening speeches of about 7 to not maximum 10 minutes. And I would like now to ask Maria Espírito Santo on what are her vision on the achievement of the Portuguese presidency, who is entering its final month, on the progress made already towards taxonomy and Green Deal, and what is leaving to be done by the forthcoming presidency. Please, Maria, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And first of all, I congratulate you to the event organizers for choosing such a relevant topic. And I must say that the European Green Deal is a crucial and ambitious challenge, and its implementation is one of the best economic response to the COVID crisis. Namely, it tackles to the multiple crises and focuses on the mobilization of investments to support the green transition in Europe. The European Deal defines an ambitious roadmap towards a climate-neutral Europe by 2050, featuring policy proposals suggesting the development and modernization of finance instruments and ensure a just and inclusive transition for all. The Green European Deal with the Next Generation EU Recovery Package represents an extraordinary public financial platform. As well, the Sustainable Finance Agenda will provide plans to mobilize the needed private investments to build forward better and more sustainable. With the next generation, we start the European renovation wave, making our buildings more energy efficient. The renovation wave for Europe, greening our buildings, aims to double annual energy renovation rates in the next 10 years. The renovation of both public and private buildings is an essential measure and has been singled out in the European Green Deal as a key initiative to drive energy efficiency in the energy sectors and deliver on its objectives. Given the labor-intensive nature of the building sector, which is largely dominated by local business, renovation of buildings play a crucial role in the European recovery of the COVID-19 pandemic. Building sector is one of the largest energy consumers in Europe, and it's responsible for more than 1/3 of EU's emissions. Currently, almost 75% of European buildings stock is inefficient, yet almost 85% to 95% of today's buildings will still be used in 2050. So, by refurbishing and refitting, we can improve the energy performance of the buildings, we cut emissions, and at the same time, we reduce the energy consumption and decrease our energy bills. This renovation will enhance the quality of life for people living in and using the buildings, reduce Europeans' greenhouse gas emissions, and create several thousand of green jobs in the construction sector. With many million European citizens unable to afford keeping their home heated, renovation is an important response to energy poverty. It can address the health and the well-being of vulnerable people. Now, let me share with you the key achievements of the Portuguese presidency on the European Green Deal. As you know, Portugal assumed the presidency of the Council of the European Union in January 2021, at a time when it was still fighting hardly with the COVID-19 pandemic with social and economic effects. The challenges we have been facing are evident, but we believe that it could be also a crucial moment for Europe's recovery. We have the vision, the programs, and also the financial instruments to make progress. One of the main priorities of the EU Portuguese presidency has been to promote the EU as a leader in climate action. We have 5 global priorities: resilient, social, green, digital, and global. We believe that a stronger social Europe in a context of economic recovery, preserving the European social model and strengthening cooperation in the area of health is also crucial. Bearing in this mind, the Portuguese presidency has been working and will continue to work in the development and implementation of several strategies and initiatives providing for the European Green Deal and related to the social dimension, such as the renovation wave. This strategy is a key element to achieve the ambitious 55 emission reduction target for 2030 and to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. The renovation wave is one of the main issues under the current negotiation at the Council. The Presidency intends to adopt the Council conclusion on the renovation wave next June at the Energy Council. Linking with this topic, we we consider also the energy poverty as a relevant issue of our presidency. The lack of thermal comfort in buildings encourages exclusion in access to energy with impacts on public health and productivity. Portugal is currently, with other member states, preparing a national strategy to fight energy poverty. This is very, very important. We believe that the shift in the energy model paradigm should improve the inclusion of the most vulnerable and low-income energy consumer, ensuring the mechanisms and instruments necessary for a fair transition without leaving someone behind. Although we strongly believe that the energy performance of building European directive is also crucial for the achievement of 2030 energy targets. Along with a set of rules to guarantee the construction and use of new buildings with almost zero energy needs. It's our program Net Zero Buildings with a high energy performance and almost zero or very small energy needs covered by energy from renewable sources. Beside that, a long-term strategy to support the renovation of residential and non-residential buildings, public and private, was developed aiming the carbon neutrality by 2050. This relevant strategy foresees the creation or adaptation of finance schemes for the renovation of the buildings in line with energy performance and sustainability criteria, increase the resilience of the buildings, promoting the construction and the rehabilitation sector, creating jobs and investment opportunities. Even though the Portuguese long-term strategy is duly aligned with the European Green Deal and the European Recovery Plan. Moreover, we consider the taxonomy a vital financial tool in the context of the green and digital recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Finally, we should ensure the quality of our investments, maximizing the impact of every euro spent in terms of environment impact, job creation, and innovation, and giving the right signal, showing the best paths to investors to speed up the green transition to achieve the climate neutrality by 2050. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you really, Maria, also for further shedding light on the actions of the Portuguese presidency to further develop the vision for Green Europe and to promote the European Union as a leader in the climate action. Now we move to Nathan Fabian, who will shed a light on the fact what is the role of the platform of sustainable finance to further support the green and low carbon transition and to elaborate sustainable ECJ strategy to avoid unsustainable consequences. Please, Nathan, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the great honor of the chance to address you today. And I congratulate the hosts of the event, and particularly our platform colleagues, SGI Europe. May I start by simply saying that sustainable finance is the idea that financial markets and investors and banks must account for planetary thresholds and human rights and social needs in their activities. Not only must they account for these things, not only must they measure them, but they must almost also contribute positively and reduce harm. The days when private markets were for profit and governments were for addressing social needs is no longer the model that we need. And if I can share some good news with you today, I think the long-term investors, the long-term custodians of the savings and the insurance pools of our citizens across Europe, I think our professional investors managing these pools of money now understand this situation. They see their role as being one that is long-term and their role as supporting the prosperity of our citizen savers for their future lives. And this has brought a new long-term perspective to the activities of investors, and I think is a very promising basis for a private finance response to the EU Green Deal. We must reflect on what has changed for this to occur. And we know that climate change is the most pressing of our environmental issues to address, and the introduction of explicit 2030 and 2050 climate mitigation goals is changing the foundations of financial decision making. The markets are realizing that incremental adjustment from today's economy and today's pollution is no longer sufficient to ensure our prosperity. Rather, it is our substantial progress towards the climate goals that is what matters. And our comparison to these goals of our performance is what must drive both policy and financing decisions. Now, the hard truth is that we are still well behind where we need to be. Now, I've got some data for climate, but similarly, we're going to have discussions on biodiversity, on water, on circular economy. All of these discussions on environmental and planetary thresholds are before us. We know that we are directing less than 1/5, less than 20% of the capital we need to the sustainable activities of the future to meet our climate goals. We have a big gap to close. Not only that, we are still investing just as much in polluting activities with high carbon emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions as we are in the low carbon solutions. And so this must change. This level of mismatch shows just how important it is that the private sector is fully behind this Green Deal that we need. Now, luckily, investors starting to see this as being in their self-interest. And so we have a moment here where the market will take and use the tools and the frameworks that we can give them. And my own colleagues in the investment community will take these tools and use them in the best way they can to make their judgments about their contribution to our sustainability goals. And please don't think I'm not thinking about social goals as well, because I'm going to comment on those in just a moment. Now, our aim must be to build trust, to build scale, and to allow the market to do its job on sustainable finance. And this is why the taxonomy is so important. The taxonomy is a tool to help our investors and our banks allocate capital to the economic activities of the future. This is a way for policymakers to get the private markets to do some of the heavy lifting on our sustainability goals and the Green Deal. The taxonomy is not a mandatory list to invest in. But as I say to you, the markets now understand the problem and they are looking for the opportunities of the future. And we must move ahead to build the capacity in Europe's markets so that Europe can be the leading economy globally on sustainable economic development. And with the taxonomy, we have one of the tools we need to make this occur. When it comes to our social performance in financial markets, now we don't benefit from the same science-based approach as we do with our environmental criteria, but the truth is our human rights, our social institutions are real and exist and must be followed in our markets as they must by our governments, and markets are also realizing this. And for the taxonomy, the Platform on Sustainable Finance will set out a framework for contribution to social goals and objectives, respecting rights and identifying substantial contributions through our economies to the social needs of our communities, and especially addressing vulnerable communities. This is the type of response we want from our private markets, and the taxonomy will show the way. Show how these private investors can support our social needs at the same time. Now, clearly, implementation of a social taxonomy is a political judgment, not for the Platform on Sustainable Finance, which I chair, but we will set out our thinking on how to achieve this in the coming months. Now, this is ever so important when we know that our environmental challenges and the economic transition ahead of us will lead to changes in our industries. It'll lead to changes in our consumption patterns. It'll lead to changes in our employment. And we must, as we contribute to the Green Deal and a green and environmental transition, have clearly in front of us how we maintain our social rights and contribute to the social good with new activities, new employment for the interests of all our citizens. And this is why the Platform on Sustainable Finance is addressing both social and environmental objectives in its approach. Finally, as we continue the platform work, we will shortly release criteria for feedback from the market to contribute to our other environmental goals, including on circular economy, water system and marine health, on biodiversity and ecosystems, and on pollution prevention and control. Because the truth is, we need to address more than climate change in the years ahead. And it's time, as I think this comprehensive approach indicates, that it is no longer good enough to make improvements in one area and cause significant harm somewhere else. And this is the thinking behind a sustainable taxonomy, that we must understand all the challenges ahead of us, that we must take our economic activities and the companies and services who provide them. We must take our employees in our communities. And of course, we must take our financiers, our investors, along with us to contribute to the future European economy we all know we must have in the fulfillment of the Green Deal and our sustainability goals. Thank you for the chance to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, and our admirations to your very challenging work in order to translate the expectations and the visions of all the stakeholders into precisely defined criteria that will guide and channel the private investments towards achieving climate neutrality. Now, I would like to turn to Filippo Brandolini and ask him how exactly this programming is happening vis-a-vis the SGIs when the criteria for taxonomy are implemented, and also how he sees taxonomy contributing to the change in the waste management sector. Filippo, please, you have the floor.
Mr. Brandolini, you can press speak. Your microphone is open. Mr. Brandolini, you can press speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now it's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure for me to take part to this meeting. As Vice President of SGI Europe, I can say that beyond representing public services and services of general interest at EU level, we are a direct relay to the EU institutions of the support of our members, as well as of their needs to make the EU Green Deal a success. The whole European ecosystems relies on public services and SGIs, as they have had a long-standing operational tradition and a highly integrated and efficient infrastructure for decades. As already mentioned by some colleagues, the responsibility of employers of services of general interest in responding to the climate and environmental challenges has always been addressed with both a universal and an inclusive perspective. Public undertakings and SGI providers have an intricate knowledge of all economic actors and the essential links existing between new technologies, political and civil behaviors, and the environmental limits. They work according to medium-long-term plans, carrying out fundamental investments in physical and digital infrastructures, and assuring quality and safe employment mainly classified as green jobs. It's a first remark about the importance of EU taxonomy to make sustainable investment are more easy and more accessible for SGI providers. As a cross-sectoral EU organization covering many sectors, such as waste management, water, energy, or public transport, our members, after having demonstrated to be indispensable and resilience also in pandemic phase, by always assuring essential services to the citizens, will continue to play an important part in this transition to a sustainable Europe. I would like to underline our continuous support to the European Commission in its mission to reach its climate and environmental commitments from the EU Green Deal. However, to make the vision of the EU Green Deal into effective actions with results to mitigate climate change and build up resilience, 2 points need to be addressed. Firstly, one important aspect from the sector I know best, the waste management, if not even the real driver to make the EU Green Deal a reality, is the concept of the circular economy. Looking at the legislative procedures at both the national and EU level, and at the operational level, we can only see a very complex framework currently in place. Across Europe, many thousands of enterprises, SGI enterprises, are daily involved in enhancing and putting in place preventative measures to waste and enhance the recycling and disposal of waste streams. In doing so, they actively contribute to environmental protection and security in their regions. This happens largely in silence and far away from citizens and politicians' consciousness. Should the zero waste ambition become a reality, this will mean a complete transformation for the entire waste stream. So far, we see a lack of generally defined strategies with the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, mainly for preventative measures, recycling and energy generation strategies, material flow management, and protection measures. However, these are exactly in the public interest to ensure this will remain a daily reality. SGI Europe is here to bring exactly this concept to the surface whilst creating opportunities that we can work on to further develop the Circular Economy Action Plan. My second point, aside from putting the right legislation and stable legal frameworks in place, is a clear need for a structural investment strategy that will support such a vision. As a representative of SGI Europe within the platform for sustainable finance, we have welcomed and remain very supportive of the EU taxonomy, which aims to finance the transition to a climate-neutral Europe. With our seat in the platform, SGI Europe is directly contributing in setting the right framework to redirect capital flows towards environmental and social sustainable economic activities. The initiative for a sustainable finance mechanism and the taxonomy regulation must become a central element to realize the objectives of the EU Green Deal. For this to be effective, SGI Europe supports a strongly science-based approach and believes that it is essential that this framework is guided by common principles that safeguard similar level of ambition across various sectors, respects the important role of public undertakings and SGIs, and grabs the opportunity to make use of innovative solutions and new technologies when they are offered. Note, we are pleased to read that the waste and circular economy sector in the objectives and activities are being recognized as an industry with remaining important investment gaps and the need for action. At the same time, there is still room for improvement within the taxonomy. The waste and circular economy sector have great potential for a rapid, effective, and eco-efficiently reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, for example, by diverting waste from landfills. While prevention, reuse, and recycling of waste should remain the priority of any policy, it is important to recognize from recycling residual waste remain, as well as some materials cannot be recycled forever, i.e. plastics or paper. After implementing in many member states a state-of-the-art separate collection scheme, the alternative of landfilling is the incineration with energy recovery, as it is set in the Circular Economy Action Plan and waste hierarchy. Therefore, technologies such as the waste-to-energy that play now and in the future a crucial role for the circular economy need support for the services they provide to safely manage non-recyclable waste. Many member states are lack of waste-to-energy capacity, and in general, taxonomy should encourage revamping and innovation for this kind of facilities. Then, essentially, landfilling has a bigger impact on the climate and far more reaching consequences for the health of society and the environment. Lastly, I would like to underline that having in place a solid transition plan will be of great importance. With the platform transition paper in place, we have set the right tone and a policy recommendation helping to further develop the EU taxonomy in its finalization process. For SGI Europe, this will mean, in particular, is to also make a sustainable use of gas options to secure the implementation of renewable energy, replacing in a short term as a more impacting fossil fuels. Moreover, gas can be also in part replaced by biomethane, a 100% renewable fuel produced through biowaste treatments. For example, in Italy, we have estimated that almost all of the natural gas for vehicles could be totally replaced by biomethane. It is also a double win situation since the gas infrastructures is already well established in many member states that we can make easily use of. Overall, we can safely say that the EU Green Deal and the EU taxonomy are policy frameworks which we need. I believe that they can rightly address the environmental challenges with a transversal perspective, and the SGIs are in the very forefront to steer the sustainability ambition into a reality. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you very much, Filippo, for bringing these very particular elements into the debate. And now I would like to pass the floor to Stefan Bach. Please, Stefan, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Milena. Yes, and thank you for arranging this webinar, which is indeed working committee.
Stefan, sorry, we are losing you. Could you maybe refresh?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's perfect. Thank you.
Well, I was just saying that the employers group of the EESC welcomes the objectives of the Green Deal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. As you know, the 2050 emission reduction objective for transport is set at 90%. We appreciate the result achieved by the Portuguese presidency in bringing the Green Deal forward, and in particular in reaching agreement on the climate law with the commitment to an at least 55% reduction.
Stefan, we lost you again. Can you maybe switch off your camera to see if it's better?
I'm sorry about these technical problems. You never know what happens. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, but maybe you switch off the camera. Maybe that would help.
Oh, okay. I'll try that. Yeah. You've seen me now, so you know.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's perfect.
Okay. We like the idea of cooperation with the Commission on implementation issues as foreseen by the climate law through the commitment to engage with sectors to prepare sector-specific roadmaps charting the path to climate neutrality. And we also like the idea of an advisory scientific panel taken together with the undertaking to connect with business sectors. This could create a nicely balanced framework for realistic implementation. We do look forward to the important Fit for 55 package now foreseen in mid-July. There are many very important proposals for businesses and companies in the European Union, ETS, CBAM, effort sharing, renewable energy directive. Coming from the transport sector myself, I particularly look forward to see the proposed revision of the ETS directive, which appears to be extended to further transport sectors. maritime and possibly also later land transport. And since I come from one of the Nordic countries, I also take great interest in what happens in the Renewable Energy Directive, in particular with respect to biofuels and the LULUCF regulation. And that brings me right away to one of the main points I want to make, and that is that where theory comes into conflict with reality, solutions must be found that are compatible with realities. For instance, it is obvious that making ETS trading on land transport subject to every lorry or road haulage company would be very complex and mean a lot of the administration. And as for biofuels, there are significant possibility for reducing emissions at a reasonable cost. And in my part of the world, which have a lot of forest industry with abundant waste that could be used for biomass, this is of course very interesting. And we find it important that biofuels should be fully recognized as a sustainable alternative fuel. But no doubt, electrification, energy efficiency through, for instance, better capacity use and improved general efficiency to digitalization must also play a significant part in reducing emissions. So what is important from our perspective for emission reduction to be a win-win game for all involved? One, the objectives must be realistic and reasonably achievable, no doubt with extra efforts, but achievable. Two, the objectives must be stable. Constant change of objectives create uncertainty, makes planning more difficult for companies, and increases the risk of sunken assets. Three, rules must also be both stable and clear. Setting different environmental criteria for different contexts will necessarily create confusion, increase investment risk, and make planning more difficult. And four, the status of rules must be clear. Are they compulsory or just recommendations? And if they are recommendations, how to measure the effect? This brings me to what, in my mind, is the big discussion, the taxonomy. As you saw, we are working with this right now in the EESC. The basic idea is, of course, good and basically non-conflictual. As mentioned earlier today, the taxonomy regulation adopted last year wanted to create transparency around what investments could qualify as green and to prevent so-called greenwashing. The regulation contains a number of basic criteria on various environmental objectives that as such appears to be perfectly in line with the EU climate policy. But these criteria is complemented by technical criteria set out in delegated acts, provisionally adopted by the Commission in April. And here the problem lies because the delegated regulation contains extensive criteria about what is considered to be fully green or transitional, and the rest is presumably not green. The technical criteria set out in the delegated regulation cover, in fact, most industrial and service activities. They are extremely detailed and sometimes require a lot of extra work by those concerned. As for the sector I know best, that is transport, criteria in general go way beyond the environmental criteria set out in current EU law, decided by the co-legislators. One example is the requirement of zero tailpipe emission from heavy vehicles. This makes, in many cases, impossible to use vehicles and fuels offered today that is quite necessary for reaching the 2030 climate target. And these vehicles and fuels are all accepted as green in existing EU legislation. What makes it even more questionable is that the standardization organ ISO currently are developing tools for making well-to-wheel emission measurable that is expected to be ready very soon and would make those vehicles green according to the taxonomy criteria. So we wonder why the hurry in this case. We are told that the delegated acts are living documents that will change over time, that these standards are scientifically sound, and that might well be, but it might be a bit questionable to replace lawmakers with scientists. Legislation at the end of the day should be the outcome of legislative process. But the real problem is that we get double standard. And on top of that, we find rumors saying that those who do not live up to the higher standards set in the taxonomy may have financing problems for the companies, or at least may have to accept more expensive financing. There is a lot, in fact, a lot of uncertainty and indeed fear going around, and that is not very favorable situation for growth, in particular for companies who, in some cases, have problems on the basic task of trying to bounce back after the COVID-19 crisis. So don't get me wrong here. I am very much in favor of strong measures to mitigate climate change, and we are in the EESC. But I am not in favor of double regulation that create ambiguity and uncertainty, and that could, at worst, have serious negative effects. Such regulation goes against the basic requirement that I outlined some moments ago. Lastly, you might, in fact, at the end of the day, question the usefulness of financial market regulation as a tool for environmental policy. But let's hope that in the end we find common good solutions for the companies, for the citizens, and for the climate. The EESC is ready to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for highlighting the importance of stable criteria and predictable environment. Now I have the following suggestion. We will take up to 3 questions from the floor. I can see the 3 speakers already asking the floor, up to 1 minute, and then I will turn back to the panelists, giving them the floor in order to address the questions and at the same time make their conclusions. So I'm starting with Arnaud Puech-Dalissac. Please, Arnaud, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Milena, et merci à tous. Merci tous aux intervenants. En tant que vice-président.
Thank you very much indeed. This Green Deal, I think it's Stephen who's involved here at business level. And also I want to underscore just how important it is to deal with the challenges and difficulties that we're facing. My question, however, is how do we tell the Commission that perhaps we're going too fast vis-à-vis growth, vis-à-vis unemployment? And how can we work it that first and foremostly we preserve employment, competitivity, and then we move towards a greener economy, rather than moving ahead and seeing greater unemployment and so forth, and then we'll be plunged into an even deeper crisis here in Europe.
Thank you, Arnaud. Now I give the floor to Janusz Petkiewicz. Janusz, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting debate. And I would like to raise the general problem, because we are now in the employees group. So we know what does it mean investment. We know what does it mean recovery fund, how to get the investment working, and what is the profitability, and so on and so on. But I would like to raise the problem in all the strategies, which are correct from on the behalf of the European Union and the Commission. Is there any real thinking about changing mentality to reach our goals, which we support, everybody of us from the employees group? So I mean to talk about that bottom up, and top down direction. So just how to treat in the new way the small business and medium-sized businesses, like Valeria justly mentioned at the beginning, 500,000 small firms and 30% of the labor force. How can we really understand and recognize the power of the voice of this huge business part, and on the behalf of the old dinosaurs of the big energy producers? Do they understand that the change of the mentality is so important? How they will treat it as a logistic support and really support for the small cooperatives and the prosumers and the local businesses all over Europe? Is it the problem of the interests of the high level policy decision makers? Thank you.
Thank you, Janusz. And now Maurizio Reale. Maurizio, please.
Grazie. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Milena. Just one thought here. Well, my compliments to everybody for the excellent words we've heard and what are very important subjects. But just a very brief thought here. The Common Agricultural Policy, the Green Deal, the role of the agricultural system is a strategic role. I think as far as the Green Deal is concerned, as indeed the Portuguese presidency has highlighted in its debate on the new CAP, is a fundamental issue. So that's why I have this question to those who've taken the floor. Do you think it is worthwhile pushing along such lines so that our development is increasingly more sustainable here on our continent? Thank you.
Very good and philosophical question to our distinguished panelists. And you also have the questions of Arno and of Janusz. So I would like to ask you both to address the questions and to share your takeouts from today's event. And I first go to Maria. Please, you have the floor.
Ms. Santu, your microphone is open. You can press speak.
Yes. Yeah.
You can press speak, please.
Just a moment, please.
I would suggest that Maria is refreshing her browser in order to have a better connection. And while we are expecting this to be done, then I would like to move forward to Nathan. Please, you have the floor and you please press the speak button.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the thoughtful questions. And I understand that many have concerns about the economic transition ahead of us. The economic transition that we face is unfortunately unavoidable. The planetary constraints mean that there must be a response. This is on climate, this is on biodiversity, this is on the areas that I set out in my remarks. And so, faced with the reality of economic transition, we must ask how best to support business, how best to support employees and the community, and to give ourselves the best chance of prosperity for all. The financial community, through the taxonomy, through these sustainable finance initiatives, is saying, we are ready to finance the future. We are ready to allocate capital to the companies that understand what is ahead of us. Now, this is a financial investor's responsibility. They have their own legal duties to fulfill, and that's what these duties require them to do. So this is not generosity, this is self-interest, but the interests can be aligned. They can be aligned with the small businesses who are innovating, who are prepared to go to their banks and say, we will be more energy efficient. We will invest in new technology. We will create the jobs of the future. Every company can transition if it is willing and if it can describe its transition relative to the taxonomy. Finance will not be withdrawn where profit can be earned. I think we should all be just very clear about that. But there is an incentive now for investors and for banks to finance the future. And we really must grab that opportunity. And I encourage us all to do that. On agriculture specifically, again, we must recognize the constraints of the physical world we operate in that either take better technologies, better business models, new ways of using our resources and protecting them so that they are productive to support our communities. Agriculture can be challenging for big finance. But once again, the taxonomy provides an opportunity. If we can identify the activities and the environmental performance of the future in agriculture, then the finance community is saying we are willing to invest. And I think this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity that stands out as unusual in the last 40 years. And there is a moment here to grab. And I encourage all members, I thank members for their very reasonable questions, but we must grab the opportunity before us.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for this very positive and forward-looking conclusions. And we will be really willing to explore further this topic with you. Now, let's try again to have the floor to Maria. Please press the speak button.
Do you hear me now?
Yes?
Yes, now it works fine, please. Unfortunately, we again lost Maria. Perhaps you should either try again to press speak button or refresh your browser, please. Once more, let's try. Okay, now it's fine.
Okay, do you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. We have a robust guidance directing capital flows to sustainable investment, and we have also improved new technologies like the development the TININ regulation, and we have an innovation plan also to develop we have a strategy for hydrogen and recovering the infrastructure for gas and electricity to transport in the future the hydrogen. We have some plans. We have a national recovering and resilience plan with some investments for employers and all the enterprises to recover the economy. And I think it's a good challenge to put in ongoing this Green Deal, and I think it's a good way, and we are very aligned with the external politician, with the national politic, and to have a better energy plan and climate plan also.
Thank you very much, Maria. Now we go to Filippo, please. Filippo, you have the floor. I think Filippo. Okay, let's try. Can you please push the speak button, Filippo?
Okay. Thanks. Very quickly. I think taxonomy is a very important, very strong and strategic tool to design and to carrying out the Green Deal. I think the taxonomy has to set the final objectives, but I think also the taxonomy has to define the following steps, the steps and the following steps to reach these final objectives. In this way, I think I want to say you again, it's very important to define a transition path to reach the final objective of the Green Deal. Transition, it's a fundamental concept for member states, but also for company, to allow them to step by step update their activity and in this way to be consistent with the final objectives of the taxonomy. Sometimes the problem can be read from our side to be too to run too fast toward the final objectives, and in this way we are afraid we have the risk to lose some of our companies, our piece of activities in the way. Second remark, very quick, about agriculture. I think from my side, from the side of public services management, agriculture is a very strategic sector, also for our services, and we can have many deals with agricultural sector if we think to material recovery, to fertilizers, natural fertilizer. We are talking about in the taxonomy of phosphorus recovery. So I think that agriculture is a sector very and strictly linked to other sectors, and the very valuable approach of the taxonomy is also the need of a holistic approach where every sector is included and is related to the other sectors. Thanks.
Thank you very much for highlighting this important element that no sector or enterprise shall be left behind. And now for the final word to Stefan back, and then I guess that Group 1 President will conclude the meeting. So Stefan, please.
Yes, very, very shortly. The general problem with the taxonomy that we have discussed today and in many other forum is still that it is exactly what was said by the speaker before me. It is a strong tool. We understand that and we hear about that. It's important for Europe to lead the way, etc. On the other hand, it is said that it's only recommendations, and then if you are an SME, small transport companies like my association's members, they wonder. They are very much ready to invest for reaching the climate goals in 2050, but they have to invest today, to reach the 2030 target, and what should they invest in then? Because the taxonomy is really aiming at the final, the best, not the good, and that's I think something that should be addressed in one way or another, because we need a more transition towards the goal in the end, but we have to invest in what's available at reasonable prices for the companies to invest in today. And I would also say that I think it would be very good if there could be some kind of discussion with the financial sector and the companies, the industrial and business branches, to lower the amount of anxiety and that is there today, because they don't understand how this will affect their businesses. So I think there are ways of going ahead with the taxonomy, but we have to understand that there is a lot of question marks right now how it's going to work and how my company is going to be affected from my members. So thank you very much for giving me the floor today. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the floor, Milena, to maybe wrap up. I must say that this has been a really positive and interesting discussion, and it is clear that it was always clear that this is an important and vital issue that we are dealing with, which has, I think, even gained more momentum due to the crisis, to the COVID crisis, although at the beginning of the COVID crisis, there was serious doubt whether this would derail the whole Green Deal momentum, but I think the opposite has happened. And it is clear to me, and I think to everyone, even when you see on the chat, that we need to engage more, because this is an area where we can set the agenda. Very often we work very much with the Commission agenda, and the Green Deal is an integral part of the Commission agenda, and it should be our role to work proactively to, as much as possible, set the agenda even here. And clearly, there is scope for a lot of detailed discussion, more detailed discussion on issues. We mentioned agriculture, we mentioned waste, green financing, very, very important. And therefore, I think, and there are other items which were brought up in the chat, such as the role of cities, for example, which I think is also quite an important aspect to look at. So I think all in all, this has been, if anything, it has given us more momentum to take on this topic more and more. And I think the quality of the speakers that we had today was a real value added to us all. And initially in my initial intervention, I said these debates are sometimes fertilizer for the brain. And I think today we had a lot of fertilizer indeed, in terms of what we have heard and in terms of the possibilities of going forward. So once again, I want to thank the speakers, and I must, of course, thank Valeria and her team, and I must thank Milena for her role in that. And finally, and certainly not least, I must thank our secretariat and our people for the hard work they also put in ensuring, one, that everything was well prepared, and two, that everything went well. So clearly, this is not the only time we will be discussing on this topic, and let's create and look for more opportunities, how we can create more discussion, even in creative ways. So thank you once again, and I wish you all a good rest of the day and indeed a good weekend. So thank you for this.